Since the 3rd of July, I have been contemplating how the state should be leveraging these assets that it owns to drive economic development and job creation.
Minister McPherson, can you please ensure that by the end of this year, these properties are repurposed for that objective?
Because it was the honourable member's leader who said 5 years ago that he wanted to build a private school in Alexander, and he said that if we don't build that school in the next 5 years, don't re-elect us next time because we would be useless. And I think that that was a very prophetic statement by the Honourable Malema. So
Speaker, sorry, how relevant is that nonsense that he just spewed to the question that was asked of him?
Why is the majority of the department's 81,000 properties left idle and empty while millions of South Africans are without a roof over their heads?
I think I've...
Thank you, Minister. Question 361 has been asked by the Honourable Mare to the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. The question is asking about how the department will optimise and rationalise the portfolio of over 81,000 public properties, including repurposing, selling, leasing, or allocating underutilised assets to serve the public good. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Mare, thank you for this important question. Since the 3rd of July, I have been contemplating how the state should be leveraging these assets that it owns to drive economic development and job creation. In truth, we are the single largest property owner in the country, which generates no financial return on its assets. If we did, and which we will do, we would be able to use that income to maintain our properties and invest in new schools, police stations and hospitals. In order to do this, the department will repurpose and reposition the PMTE as a viable and efficient vehicle to deliver comprehensive value creation through the state immovable asset portfolio. Our intention is to direct private sector investment projected at over 10 billion rand in the next term of this administration within the state property portfolio. This will allow the PMTE to deliver proper management services and become an income-generating entity, which means we can reprioritise our budget elsewhere, such as expanding the EPWP program or boosting infrastructure development. The formation of this entity is crucial to ensure any revenue earned through rentals or disposals in property remains within the company for onwards investment. Honourable Mare, we also need to be realistic. The state does not need to own or can financially afford to own 81,000 properties and 5 million hectares of land. Where properties have no use to the department, clients or other spheres of government, or cost more than they generate, disposing of these properties while keeping the revenue earned from the disposal would go a long way into reducing the 3 billion rand overdraft and be better spent on infrastructure projects. A perfect example of this is the Telkom Towers, with approximately 1 billion rand sunk into that project with nothing to show for it. It could make far more economical sense to dispose of that asset and get it off of our books rather than spending millions each year in trying to secure it. Let the private sector come in and put its own resources into helping us with these buildings. Assets must be made to sweat, meaning they must not just sit idly by, but generate income from them, not only for revenue, but to provide more funds for infrastructure, maintenance and upkeep. Where asset use is not optimised, we will investigate whether there is a need for this property or whether it should be disposed of. We're also not afraid to commit some of our assets to pilot projects. For example, land owned by our department in and around small harbours should be piloted through triple Ps. Many of these small harbours sit in a state of disrepair, where instead they could become hubs for the local economy. Communities can be uplifted through jobs and infrastructure development in these areas. Next month, I look forward to announcing a pilot project where we will seek proposals from the public on a number of buildings that are either not being used or in a state of disrepair. Madam Speaker, this is how we turn South Africa into a construction site and use public assets for public good. Thank you so much.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Marais.
Minister, could you clarify to whom these identified properties will be disposed of or leased to, and what conditions must these entities meet to qualify for access to these assets?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. Our first priority is to try and seek collaboration with other government departments, entities, or local municipalities, particularly where land and buildings can be used for social housing. That is our first priority, and if we can get that right, we are more than willing to make those land and buildings available. Where they make strategic sense to dispose of those assets, we will do so that we can generate revenue and use that for social infrastructure. Where there is also the ability to call on the private sector to give us ideas through request for proposals, we will do so as well. But the simple truth is, Honourable Marais, the department cannot continue to carry the burden of 81,000 properties when there are declining budgets that are given to our department for maintenance. Coupled with that, we have client departments that owe us 14 billion rand. We simply cannot be required to produce services to clients while they don't pay for us. I think that there's a discussion to be had around devolving some of the power that resides in our department to client departments to manage their own infrastructure and maintenance needs going forward. Thank you very much.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Nkosi.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Minister, what is the plan of the department to improve revenue streams from immovable assets of government to ensure that it serves the public good and is able to fund the maintenance and further development of property portfolio? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Nkosi. That's an excellent question, because right now this department is not an income-generating department. If any other property asset company was run like ours, we would have long been liquidated. So we need to look at where's the opportunity to generate income from high-value assets, and the department certainly owns that, and where we can repurpose them, where we can repackage them, and where we can partner with the private sector to generate annuity returns. That is a priority for us. But where it makes sense to dispose of those properties, we must be realistic about doing so. What we've seen, particularly in suburban areas, is that a number of these properties are either derelict because they're not being used, or they've been overtaken. And they then contribute to crime in communities. And it is unfair that we inflict that on them just because we are unable to maintain or secure our properties. If we are able to start generating income, if we're able to start generating revenue like any other property asset business would, we can take that money and put it into building schools, building hospitals, maintaining police stations. No police officer or no nurse should have to work in some of the conditions that they currently do because we are unable to afford the maintenance. No prisoners should be sitting in some of the horrific conditions that we have seen of late. But we need to start generating our own income if we're not going to get more income or more grants from National Treasury. Thank you very much.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for that response. In the light of South Africa's pervasive homelessness and the constitutional imperative to provide adequate housing, why is the majority of the department's 81,000 properties left idle and empty while millions of South Africans are without a roof over their heads? We just read today that 388 buildings owned by Public Works have been hijacked when these buildings could be used to house homeless people in this country. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Reddy. That is not true. that the majority of the 81,000 buildings are derelict or abandoned. So I don't know where you got that information from. The reality is that also we need political parties to stop encouraging people from invading buildings and invading land. That is a massive problem that we face in this country. And so I would ask that you would join us in saying that people should not invade buildings, they should not invade land, and that we must work with local municipalities to ensure that where homelessness exists, that we are able to repackage and repurpose those buildings. But if they are invaded, we now have to go to court to go and get them out. And that is incredibly expensive and difficult. But I will say that there is one city that is dealing with homelessness in a very effective way, and that is the city of Cape Town. It's the only city in the country that has spent 250 million rand for facilities for homeless people to be able to have a dignified existence, be able to go through social relief, be able to get access to home affairs, and that is the city of Cape Town. That's why we were able to get an eviction at the castle so quickly, because of the work that the city of Cape Town does here, and I think that there's a lot that we can learn from them. Thank you very much.
The last supplementary question has been allocated to the EFF. We have not received a name, but it is the EFF's opportunity.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Minister McPherson. One of the immediate pressing needs is the plight of students in inner cities, whose accommodation has been leased out to dubious characters who milk the students. The question to you is, Minister, can you repurpose these properties in inner cities for purposes of accommodating TVETs and university students to free them from the dubious characters who take money from the Department of Higher Education and subject students under unbearable, inhabitable conditions under which they cannot study and fulfill their university tenure? Can you please ensure that by the end of this year, these properties are repurposed for that objective? Thanks so much, Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I think we must be careful about making timelines definitive, because it was the Honourable Member's leader who said 5 years ago that he wanted to build a private school in Alexander, and he said that if we don't build that school in the next 5 years, don't re-elect us next time, because we would be useless. And I think that that was a very prophetic statement by the Honourable Malema. So
Honourable Minister, please take your chair. Please take your seat. There's a point of order. Honourable Minister, please take your seat.
Much.
Honourable Paulson.
Deputy Chair, Deputy Speaker, sorry, how relevant is that nonsense that he just spewed to the question that was asked of him?
Honourable Paulson, that is not a point of order. Honourable Minister, please proceed.
I think I've said all I needed to. Thank you so much.